The grand ballroom of the Blackwood estate shimmered under the glow of 1,000 golden lights. Madeline Hayes stood at the center of it all, poised like royalty, her black satin gown hugging her figure, her every movement effortless, calculated. Tonight was supposed to be her moment. After years of careful curation, of erasing the girl she used to be, she had finally become what she had always wanted, admired, respected, untouchable. Then came the words that shattered everything. Madeline Hayes is a murderer. The voice cut through the opulence like a gunshot. Conversations halted. A champagne flute slipped from someone's grasp, shattering against the marble floor. The sound was drowned out by the sharp inhale of 100 gasps. Madeline's breath stilled in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass, the coolness grounding her as the weight of the accusation settled over the room. Slowly, she turned her head. At the entrance, standing beneath the towering archway, was a man whose presence radiated quiet authority. Detective Adrian Cross. Tall, composed, and staring at her with the kind of gaze that stripped away every layer of carefully woven deception. In his gloved hand, he held an old yellowed file, the kind that spelled ruin. Madeline's stomach twisted. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. She had buried Claire Beckett, the girl she used to be, the girl who had fled a crime she swore no one would ever uncover. And yet, here it was, the past clawing its way back to the surface, dragging her secrets out into the light. From somewhere in the ballroom, a voice whispered, hushed but sharp. Murderer. The word rippled through the room like a slow-moving poison, curiosity turning to suspicion. Madeline's pulse pounded against her ribs, but her face remained unreadable. Control the narrative. Always control the narrative. With the grace of someone who had spent years mastering the art of illusion, she set her champagne glass down on the nearest tray and forced a smile. Measured, composed, unshaken. "What an entrance, Detective Cross," she said, her voice silk over steel. "But I believe you've made a rather bold accusation in front of some very powerful people." Cross didn't blink. He merely lifted the file, flipping it open. The pages inside were brittle with age, stained at the edges. A name scrawled across the top in faded ink sent ice down Madeline's spine. Claire Beckett. Not Madeline Hayes. Claire Beckett, the name she had abandoned, the identity she had erased. Her world tilted. She had spent years ensuring no one would ever speak that name again, and yet here it was, alive in the detective's hands. A bead of sweat ghosted along her spine, but she did not falter. The eyes of every guest burned into her, waiting for a reaction, for a tell. Cross held up a photograph, black and white, grainy with age. A girl, younger, wilder, different, stood beside a car wreck, her face shadowed by the harsh glare of police lights. A crime scene, a body covered in white sheets in the background. The detective's voice was calm, precise. "You can pretend all you want, but we both know the truth. Madeline Hayes never existed. She is just a mask worn by Claire Beckett, and Claire Beckett," he turned the file toward the crowd, "is wanted for murder." Gasps, murmurs, sharp inhales. Madeline's mind was already working through scenarios, pathways, exits. She had to be careful. Any misstep, any wrong move, and it would all come crashing down. From the corner of her eye she saw Alexander Reed, billionaire, business mogul, and her fiancée, stiffen. His fingers tightened around his glass, his expression unreadable. He had built an empire with her by his side. He did not marry criminals. A flicker of something dark passed through his gaze. Doubt. For the first time in years, the life Madeline had so carefully sculpted felt fragile, breakable. She turned her attention back to the detective, her voice smooth, unwavering. "Detective, I think you have the wrong person. I understand how easy it is to be misled, but—" Cross interrupted, his tone sharp. "The girl in this photograph disappeared 16 years ago, right after a man was found dead in a burning car. His name was Matthew Calloway. Your name was Claire Beckett, And that, he took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. That is something you can't outrun. A slow breath. Control. Always control. She let a soft chuckle escape her lips, shaking her head. This is absurd. She turned slightly, addressing the room. I know many of you are wondering what's happening, but I can assure you this is nothing more than a misunderstanding. But the tension in the air was thick. The doubt, the curiosity, it was already growing like a wildfire. Cross leaned in, his voice just above a whisper. We both know the past doesn't stay buried forever. Her jaw tightened. She knew that better than anyone. And for the first time in years, Madeline Hayes felt like Claire Beckett again. The girl who had once stood over a body and made the choice to run. The walls of the ballroom closed in around her, the golden lights too bright, the whispers too loud. She needed a way out, before the truth devoured her whole. For 17 years, Madeline Hayes had mastered the art of deception. Every gesture, every carefully chosen word, every polished smile, all threads in the tapestry of the life she had built. To the world, she was a woman of power and poise, a corporate consultant whose influence extended into boardrooms and backrooms alike. She had been the silent architect behind billion-dollar deals, a name whispered in elite circles, the woman who could fix anything. Perfection. That's what she had spent years sculpting. She was Madeline Hayes, not Claire Beckett. Claire had been wild, reckless. A girl who made impulsive decisions, who trusted the wrong people, who ran when things went wrong. Claire had no place in this world. Madeline was the one engaged to Daniel Porter, the man everyone believed would be the next governor. His campaign was built on integrity, accountability, family values, all things she had woven herself into. Their engagement had solidified a power couple narrative. Every magazine article praised their partnership. Every event they attended together was a testament to their future. Madeline was his perfect fiancée. She played the part flawlessly. But when she lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of their penthouse apartment, the past crept in like a shadow. Because beneath the surface, beneath the tailored suits, the high society engagements, the speeches about responsibility, there was still a girl who had buried a body in the woods and fled under the cover of darkness, 17 years ago. That night, she had been someone else, a girl with shaking hands, a girl who hadn't yet learned how to hide the fear in her eyes, a girl who had killed a man. And no matter how far she had run, how much she had reshaped herself, the past never truly vanished. It had only been waiting. 17 years ago, in a town that no longer existed on her records, Claire Beckett had fallen into the kind of trouble that didn't let go. She had been 17. Young, desperate, and reckless enough to believe that Oliver Marks was the kind of man who could save her. He was older, charming, dangerous in a way that made her feel invincible. She had been stupid. Oliver had been many things. A con artist, a thief, a liar, but he had never been safe. She had learned that too late. That night was supposed to be a job. Just a job. A quick break-in. Take the cash. Get out. That's what he had told her. But when she had stepped inside that house, something had gone wrong. The owner had been home. A struggle. A flash of violence. Then, blood. She had stood over the body, her breathing ragged, her hands slick and trembling. Oliver had been screaming something, but the words hadn't registered. She had killed him. She hadn't meant to, but intent had never mattered in the face of a crime. Oliver had panicked, told her to run, that he would take care of it, that no one would ever find out, and she had listened, because staying meant prison, or worse. So she ran. She changed her name, her past, burned every bridge, erased every connection. Claire Beckett ceased to exist that night. Madeline Hayes was born in her place. She had told herself that the case had gone cold, that whatever evidence had once existed was long buried, like the man they had left behind, until now. Now, there was a detective standing in the middle of her world, unearthing the one thing she had spent her entire life hiding, and just like that night 17 years ago, Madeline realized she was going to have to run again. Adrian Cross never let a case go cold. Some detectives moved on, content to let unsolved mysteries gather dust in forgotten archives. He wasn't one of them. There were names he carried with him, voices that whispered in the back of his mind at night. Claire Beckett had always been one of them. 17 years ago, she had vanished. A crime without resolution, a body without justice. He had sifted through the fragments of a life erased. School records, a burned-out apartment, a handful of witness statements that all led nowhere. Then, silence. The kind of disappearance that only happened when someone wanted to be forgotten. And now, after all these years, she was standing right in front of him. Only she wasn't Claire Beckett anymore. She was Madeline Hayes. Cross had been watching her for months, piecing together the life she had built. The perfect career, the polished image, the carefully controlled lie. He had always suspected that the past found a way of coming back, and Madeline Hayes was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Because now, someone else had started looking. Someone had left a tip. A file had landed on his desk, a new witness, fragments of old evidence resurfacing, forcing the case back to life. This time, there would be no running. Madeline had spent years orchestrating perfection, and now it was unraveling. It started with the questions. Daniel had always been a man of conviction, a politician who had built his entire career on honesty and transparency. He had been careful when choosing a partner, someone who would fit into his life seamlessly, someone without secrets. Now, there were gaps in Madeline's story that he couldn't ignore. "I don't understand," he had said one night, standing in their penthouse with an unopened envelope in his hands. A background check. Routine, but it had flagged inconsistencies. The kind that didn't happen by accident. She had smiled, reassured him, lied. But Daniel wasn't the only problem. The media had sensed blood. A whisper here, a rumor there, until the questions became headlines. The company she had built, the empire she had carved out of nothing, began to distance itself. No one wanted to be tied to a scandal. And then the feeling started. A presence. A shadow in the background. Someone was watching. She could sense it in the way her phone rang but no one answered. The way emails arrived from unknown senders. The way her past wasn't just being uncovered, it was being hunted. Then came the letter. A single envelope slipped under her door in the dead of night. No address, no signature, just a single sentence scrawled in black ink. "I know what you did. If you want to keep your new life, meet me." The location was as carefully chosen as the words. A decaying motel on the city outskirts. The kind of place where people disappeared without questions. She knew she should ignore it. That any rational person would. But rationality didn't matter when someone else knew her truth. That night, she drove. She told no one. The neon flickered weakly when she pulled into the lot, the motel barely holding itself together. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. She stepped inside, every muscle wound tight. And then, her breath hitched. Oliver Marks was waiting. The man she had once trusted. The man she had left behind. The man who knew everything. Madeline's pulse pounded. She had buried a body with Oliver once. Now, the question was, who was he here to bury this time? Madeline had spent years locking away the past, but Oliver knew the cracks in her armor. He had always known. He leaned against the stained motel wall, an infuriating smirk playing on his lips. The years had worn him down, his once sharp features now hardened by life on the edges of society. His presence alone was a reminder of everything she had tried to erase. "You really thought you were free, didn't you?" His voice was slow, deliberate. That you could build a perfect little life, a new name, a new man. Like none of it ever happened. Madeline's nails dug into her palms. Every instinct told her to walk away, but the weight of the envelope in Oliver's hands rooted her in place. Inside were photos. Grainy, old, but damning. A body in the woods. The body. "I could sell this story for a fortune," he continued, tapping the envelope against his palm. "The whole world would love to know about the pretty little consultant with blood on her hands. But, lucky for you, I'm willing to negotiate." His eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Madeline felt her pulse hammer against her throat. This wasn't justice. This was a shakedown. "How much?" Her voice came out colder than she intended. Oliver chuckled. "Smart girl. 5 million. And before you start whining about how hard it is to liquidate assets, I don't care. You'll figure it out. Because if you don't, well..." He lifted the envelope. "This goes to your fiancé, the press, the police, and then, sweetheart, you're done." Her chest tightened. Daniel. He couldn't know. Oliver watched her reaction with amusement, knowing he had her cornered. "Tick-tock, Madeline. I'm not a patient man." A part of her had expected this. Oliver had always been a leech, feeding off desperation. He didn't care about the past, about right or wrong. He only cared about what he could take. And now he had everything. But she wasn't that scared girl anymore. Her breathing steadied, a new kind of clarity settling in. Oliver thought he had won. He didn't realize he had just set the whole thing on fire. The gunshot. The motel room felt suffocating. Too small, too loud, too dangerous. Oliver stepped forward, crowding her space, the scent of whiskey sharp on his breath. "Come on, Maddie. You're not going to let one little mistake ruin your life, are you?" His fingers grazed her arm. "I'd hate for things to get messy." A tremor of disgust shot through her. She turned sharply, her elbow knocking into the lamp on the nightstand. It crashed to the floor, the bulb flickering out. Oliver cursed, taking a step back. That was when she saw it, the gun. It had been tucked into his waistband, half concealed beneath his jacket. A million possibilities raced through her mind. Run, scream, bargain. Instead, she reached for it. Oliver reacted instantly, his grip clamping over hers, twisting her wrist. The gun jerked between them, the cold metal digging into her palm as they struggled for control. "You stupid!" His voice cut off. A single shot cracked through the air, then silence. The weight in her hands vanished. Oliver stumbled, his back hitting the wall, eyes wide with something between shock and fury. A dark stain spread across his shirt. For a moment, the world tilted, reality slowing into something unrecognizable. Madeline stepped back, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. The gun lay on the floor, smoke curling from the barrel, but she wasn't sure. Had she pulled the trigger, or had Oliver? His legs buckled. He hit the ground, blood pooling beneath him, his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came. Then, everything crashed back into motion. Footsteps in the hallway, a voice outside, the distant wail of a siren. Someone had heard the shot. Madeline's mind screamed at her to move, but her body remained frozen. What had she done? What had she become? The answer lay in the growing pool of blood. The weight of the handcuffs pressed into Madeline's wrists as she sat in the back of the squad car, the red and blue lights flashing in the darkened streets. The sirens had long since stopped wailing, but their echo lingered in her head, blending with the deafening ring of the gunshot. Everything was unraveling. By the time she was processed and led into the dimly lit interrogation room, the gravity of her situation had fully set in. A lifetime of carefully constructed lies had crumbled in a matter of hours. Across from her, Detective Adrian Cross watched her with unsettling patience. A man who had spent his career chasing the past, now face to face with a woman who had tried to outrun hers. "You hesitated when we asked what happened," he finally said, his voice steady, unreadable. "That's not normal for someone acting in self-defense." Madeline lifted her chin, though the exhaustion in her body betrayed her. "I was in shock." He leaned back slightly, tapping his fingers against the case file in front of him. "You expect me to believe that?" She didn't answer. "Oliver Marks is dead. You were there. You had the gun." He tilted his head. "And yet, I don't think this was about self-defense." Her pulse thrummed in her ears. "I didn't plan this." "Didn't you?" Cross opened the file, sliding a set of photographs toward her. The crime scene. Blood spattered across the dingy motel walls. Oliver's lifeless body slumped against the floor. "Tell me something, Miss Hayes." He paused. Or should I say, Claire Beckett? The name felt like a slap. Why did Oliver Marks suddenly resurface after all these years? And why would a man known for small-time cons go through the trouble of blackmailing you, only to wind up dead? Her breath caught. Cross wasn't convinced she had pulled the trigger out of fear. He thought it was something else, and he wasn't wrong. 2 days into the trial, Daniel Porter made his first public statement. He was no longer standing by her. The wedding was officially called off. A man who had built his entire image on trust and integrity couldn't afford a scandal. Not now. Not ever. Madeline watched the press conference from her holding cell. Daniel's voice was somber but practiced. He had already moved on. The world had turned against her. But something wasn't right. It started with a single piece of forensic evidence, a stray footprint found near the motel's entrance. It didn't match her, nor did it match Oliver. Then, the financial records. Oliver hadn't been working alone. The payments traced back to an offshore account. A larger sum of money had exchanged hands in the weeks leading up to his death, and that's when the most damning detail surfaced. Oliver Marks had never sent the blackmail letter. Someone else had. Someone who wanted Madeline's past to come crashing down. Someone who had carefully set the pieces in motion. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Oliver hadn't been the real threat. He had been a pawn, but that meant the real mastermind was still out there, watching, waiting. The air was thick with the weight of unfinished business. Madeline stepped out of the courthouse, her heels clicking against the pavement, her face unreadable beneath the harsh glow of the streetlights. The trial was over, but the echoes of it would never truly fade. She was free, but freedom came with a price. Across the street, Detective Adrian Cross stood near his car, arms crossed, watching. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. This wasn't over. Madeline met his gaze. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. He had followed the trail of her past, unraveled her secrets one by one, but in the end, the law had drawn its lines. A technicality, a well-placed doubt. She had walked out of that courtroom with her life intact. Yet, nothing about this was a victory. Her empire was gone. Daniel had disappeared from her life without so much as a word. The media had turned her name into a cautionary tale. She had everything once. Now, she had nothing, except time. And time was cruel. The past had found her once. It would find her again. As she walked away, she knew one truth above all else. Some ghosts never stop hunting.